India Today reports from 8 besieged cities.
Fighting is extremely fierce here. You can hear shelling in the backdrop.
Here, all the Russian action, it continues, maybe at a distance, but it is quite a scare.
Heart-stopping war zone reports from frontline. The world watches India Today.
The Russian forces are regrouping. They've launched an offensive from multiple flanks. Probe missions just as yet. The moment they find resistance, they pull back to regroup. The assessment of the Ukrainian army is that the Russian forces are now splitting into multiple smaller groups to launch a multi-pronged offensive on Kyiv. While one offensive may come from the Irpin-Bucha side, the other offensive is coming from where we are, Brovary, and this is where a lot of resources are now being committed for that big offensive. India Today can report from ground zero that the Ukrainian forces are fighting and fighting hard to ensure that the Russian forces or their advance is stalled here at Brovary. We bring you the day's developments.
A 64-kilometer long line of Russian armored vehicles, tanks and artillery waiting ominously on the outskirts of Kyiv. Ukraine's capital is poised for what could be the final battle of an invasion that has entered its 16th day. India Today has accessed satellite images which show this massive convoy of Russian military regrouped and redeployed. Images show armored units maneuvering in and through towns close to the Antonov airport just northwest of Kyiv. They're now deployed in forests and along tree lines near Lubyanka with towed artillery howitzers in firing positions nearby.
This is the Brovary.
India Today went to the front line of an active war zone in Brovary, just to the east of Kyiv, to capture the ground situation.
This is an active combat zone. This is an active war zone. There is fight going on between the Russians and the Ukrainians here. A Ukrainian force has just destroyed some Russian tanks, and you can see some of these armored personnel carriers are coming this side. We are stopping here. We are trying to go ahead, but the situation here is extremely grim at this point of time.
The Ukrainians are battle ready too. Kyiv has become a fortress. Tanks, armored vehicles and troops with anti-tank guided missiles have taken up position in bone-chilling cold at the city's checkposts. Ukrainian forces have destroyed 5 Russian tanks in Brovary alone. A top Russian commander is said to have been among the 30 soldiers killed in the counter-offensive.
You have family back home. Are they worried?
Sure.
Were they worried that you're joining the forces?
I believe that all of us are worried because, as I said, it is war and the situation is changing like all the time. But I believe that, as I said, it is better to understand how you can defend yourself than to stay and do nothing because, as I said, the situation is changing quickly.
India Today went to a bomb shelter where infiltration tests were being conducted before civilians were allowed to enter. The check being done to nab Russian impersonators.
Why do you have this text and why do you really need to have people come and take the test?
So we created this sentence. Actually, if you translate it, it doesn't make sense, but this text helps us to tell if Ukrainian is here or Russian, because it's very difficult for Russians to pronounce those sounds, because some of them are purely Ukrainian.
The Ukrainian capital is bracing for a major Russian assault in the next 24 to 48 hours. When the Russians come in, they will face a force ready to fight to the last, with every able citizen armed to defend the city.
Kyiv these days looks safe despite the air attacks from the Russian side. Ukrainian militaries used to this kind of attack and repel them effectively. We are preparing to repel aggressor who is turned to the heart of our state.
With Serhiy Mirankov, Guarav Sawant and Geeta Mohan in Kyiv, Ukraine. Bureau Report, India Today.
Thanks, Gaurav. The world right now is in shock over an attack on a hospital in the city of Mariupol, which had pregnant women and little babies. There's a report that 3 people have died, including a small child. The Ukrainians have lashed back at Russians, calling this attack a horrifying war crime.
These are the most heartbreaking images to emerge from the war in Ukraine so far. A heavily pregnant woman taken out in a stretcher. A young mother with her newborn walking out of the rubble. A horrifying tragedy in the city of Mariupol after Russian troops targeted a children's and maternity hospital. Three, including a little child, died in this deadly attack, and 17 others sustained severe injuries. The world has been left shell-shocked by this attack on innocent civilians, with a clear target of women and babies. President Volodymyr Zelensky has termed the Russian aggression on the children's hospital a war crime.
Це, що окупанти роблять з Маріуполем, це вже за межою звірства. Європейці, українці, маріупольці. Сьогодні ми повинні бути єдиними у засудженні цього воєнного злочину Росії, у якому відображається усе те зло, яке окупанти принесли на нашу землю.
Russia, on the other hand, has denied claims of the attack on the hospital, claiming Ukraine had staged the entire incident and that they never targeted civilian settlements. The devastation reported in this hospital is terrifying. On your screens are images of how this world-class hospital looked before and now. There's nothing left but rubble and dilapidated buildings. With Guarav Sawant, Rajesh Pawar and Geeta Mohan in Kyiv, Ukraine, Bureau Report, India Today.
Russia is also paying the price of invasions as Ukrainian forces killed Russian tank commander Andrei Zakharov. He becomes the 3rd top Russian military commander to be killed in this war.
Armed to the teeth, tough, ruthless, the Russian military is one of the most intimidating forces in the world. But the Ukrainian resistance has been equally fierce. The war is in its 3rd week. Ukraine has inflicted enough injury on the aggressor. On Thursday, a key commander of the Russian tank regiment, Colonel Andrei Zakharov, was eliminated in Kyiv after a heavy fight. Zakharov was a recipient of the Order of Courage from Putin himself in 2016. This is not the first high-profile casualty for the Russians in this war. In a fatal blow to Russia's crack special forces, Major General Vitaly Gerasimov, the Chief of Staff of the 41st Army, was killed in Kharkiv. Russia also lost the head of the 7th Airborne Division, Major General Andrei Sukhovetsky.
a war hero, the general's loss is being seen as a bitter blow to Putin's crack units. A sign Russia's assault isn't going to plan.
The key difference now between the Ukrainian and the Russian forces is the morale component. The Ukrainians have fought very well and morale is very high, and that is infectious. And it is clearly not just between the Ukrainian professional soldiers, but also the Ukrainian civil society as a whole. They see this as a fight for national survival. And on the Russian side, morale is very low.
The death of the highly decorated veterans could be a major demotivator for the Russians and a morale booster for the Ukrainian defenders. With Guarav Sawant, Rajesh Pawar and Geeta Mohan in Ukraine, Bureau Report, India Today.
Claims and counterclaims. Now, it is the Russian side that is claiming that Ukraine and the United States of America are using Ukrainian soil to create bioweapons. Biological warfare is what the new allegation is, but Washington DC, as also the Ukrainian administration in Kyiv, have strongly denied these allegations.
Imagine biological weapons entering a war that has already killed thousands and displaced millions. The devastation would be swift, the humanitarian consequences massive. The world is concerned, worried enough for the World Health Organization to send out a warning. It has asked Ukraine to destroy all pathogens in its laboratories. A leak of a pathogen could worsen the already existing COVID pandemic. More dangerously, it will serve as a biological weapon. Russia says the United States has chemical and biological weapons labs in Ukraine, a claim that's been endorsed by China. The White House has termed the Russian claim as preposterous.
We are directly involved. We are providing $1 billion in security assistance. We are the largest provider of that. We are providing humanitarian. With the U.S. military going and engaging in Ukraine and fighting a war against Russia, we don't have any intention to do that. Russia is the country that has a chemical and biological weapons programs.
President Zelensky of Ukraine too went on record as saying that Ukraine had no biological weapons.
Прячут своих генералов, скрывают от своего же народа, что отправляют срочников на эту войну, лишь бы только силы вторжения сделать побольше. А мы виноваты. Нас все обвиняют в нападках на якобы миролюбивую Россию. И что теперь? Что это за обвинение в подготовке химических атак? Вы что, решили провести дехимизацию Украины?
America, on the other hand, has charged Russia with having plans to use biological weapons in Ukraine. The worry is Russia has a track record and a stockpile of biochemical weapons, including nerve agents. So what exactly are bioweapons? The WHO says biological weapons are microorganisms like viruses, bacteria, fungi or other toxins that are produced and released deliberately to cause disease and death in humans, animals or plants for strategic effects. A new potentially dangerous dimension has been added to the Russia-Ukraine war, one that has to be countered at any cost.
The World Health Organization has asked the government in Ukraine to destroy all the pathogens in labs in Ukraine to ensure that there is no threat of a biological leak or a problem that could create a situation worse than the COVID pandemic. Russia, of course, has warned that the government here in Ukraine is trying to ensure that there would be biological weapons that are being prepared, a charge that's been denied very strongly by the Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky. With cameraman Pavan Kumar in Borvori, Ukraine, Guarav Sawant for India Today.
The Ukrainian side has said that there was no outcome to the talks between Ukraine and Russia, between Kuleba and Sergei Lavrov. This is the fourth round of talks and the first foreign ministerial talks, which has resulted in no outcome.
Ukrainian Foreign Minister Dmytro Kuleba said no progress was made on achieving a ceasefire in Ukraine in talks with his Russian counterpart Sergei Lavrov on Thursday. Hosted by Turkey, they were the first high-level talks between the two countries since Moscow invaded its neighbour. Kuleba told reporters the most critical situation was in the southern port of Mariupol, but that Lavrov did not commit to a humanitarian corridor there.
I want to confirm once again that Ukraine did not surrender, is not surrendering, and will not surrender. We are ready for diplomacy. We are looking for diplomatic solutions. But while there are no such solutions, we will be dedicated.
Не здається і не здасться. Ми готові до дипломатії.
By sacrificing ourselves to defend our land, our people from Russian aggression.
Віддано, самовіддано, жертвуючи собою, захищати нашу землю, наших людей від російської агресії.
Lavrov said Moscow wanted what he called a friendly, demilitarized Ukraine and reiterated a Russian demand that Ukraine should adopt neutral status. Russia has presented proposals to Ukraine and wants a reply, he said. Kuleba said Russia was demanding Ukraine's surrender. Lavrov said President Vladimir Putin would not refuse to meet with his Ukrainian counterpart Volodymyr Zelensky, but the meeting would have to be substantive and focus on specifics. Russia's invasion, which it calls a special military operation, has uprooted more than 2 million people. The United Nations says it's the fastest humanitarian crisis in Europe since World War II. Lavrov said the proper venue for diplomacy should be Belarus, an ally of Moscow that has hosted several rounds of lower-level talks. They have so far yielded only limited progress on opening up humanitarian corridors.
Well, that is all we have time for on this special broadcast that comes to you from the strife-torn Ukrainian capital, Kyiv. The battle is set to intensify in the hours and days ahead. India Today's team will continue to report from Ground Zero. But that is all cameraman Pavan Kumar and I have for you on this special broadcast. Many thanks for watching.